So I literally gained 20 pounds while trying to lose 20 pounds. And for a man that is dealing with this cycle of losing weight, gaining weight back, trying many different diets, trying to figure out what is the diet, what is the most optimal diet, what is the best diet for somebody who keeps staying on this cycle, what's the best diet for really stressed out men, like things like this. I'm going to tell you exactly why the harder you diet, the more you try to restrict within your diet, the bigger the problem gets. And that is not the thing that is going to get you to finally lose fat sustainably, keep it off finally, and not worry about it ever coming back again. Because by the time I realized that I had this problem, I was already 195 pounds and I got all the way down to 170 because I first dealt with an injury and I'd lost a bunch of weight from that injury, got down to 175 pounds from 185, 190, and then got my way back up to 195 really because I was dealing with this problem of overeating and this cycle. And I was even this before I got to 195 really trying hard to lose weight and couldn't. I hated the way I looked. Every time I looked in the mirror, I would tell myself like, dude, you're fat. And so by the time I realized I had a problem, I was already 195 and I had gotten as big as 218 to 220-ish range. I remember 218 pretty distinctly, but it could have been even heavier because I was, at that point, I was kind of already sporadic with weighing myself essentially. So yeah, let's just get into it. So where did this come from? I talked a little bit about it initially, touched on it, that really this problem of overeating and the cycle that I'm going to talk about of overeating, restricting, and then overeating again, restricting more, and then ultimately losing, gaining weight. This, by the time I realized I had a problem within this cycle, was again, I was already 195 pounds, but it really started when I was at college. I tore my ACL before I actually got to college. I went to Davidson College to play football, and I grew up an athlete. So sports was really all I ever knew. Sports was my identity. Tyler Dittmer, the football player, was my identity. And when I got to college, I couldn't play anymore. So that was already weighing on me a lot. I was dealing with a breakup with a long-term high school girlfriend that we dated most of high school. And first time away from home, couldn't just drive back for the weekend because I was further away from home and I had football stuff. So there was a time period where there was a lot going on. And so what did I do? I resorted to eating and used food as a numbing agent to kind of just comfort me through the times. That on top of being a college student and drinking on the weekends after the weekdays were never really bad at all. I never drank on the weekdays. We had football and everything, but weekends after football games were pretty rowdy, as you can imagine. So the thing that kept getting me through really this time period, as I was in the middle of rehab and really just trying to find my way, really confused with a lack of identity and losing an identity of sort, having an identity crisis, was food. And again, I gained 25 pounds before I realized that was the problem. And even before this, I had this software, let's say, in my head that there are good foods and there are bad foods, right? The good foods are your whole foods, right? Meat, fruit, vegetables, depending on who you're talking to, fruit and vegetables, and let's say eggs and milk and whatever. I mean, these things have become so subjective now, but it used to be pretty unison, I feel like. And then bad foods, anything that's super processed or sugary or bread. There's probably a large consensus of like what would be considered good and bad foods, right? So this stemmed all the way back to my first time ever dieting so my first time ever dieting my senior year of high school. Well, but then before I actually tore my ACL, let's backtrack a little bit. Experimented with a diet for the first time because I wanted to get in shape for football because I was getting ready to go play at Davidson. So I needed to be in the best shape of my life at that point. I was like, okay, I got to start eating more fruits and vegetables and just lock in a little bit, right? So naturally what I do, I cut out all the bad foods, all the sweets, at that point it was really just sweets where I was like, okay, I just got to cut out sweets entirely. And this created that mindset of like good and bad foods, right? Very familiar with this. And let me preface, I'm not saying that sweets and breads and these processed foods are necessarily good, but I will get into this as I'm talking about good and bad foods here. So prior to my actual injury and dealing with this overeating cycle when I got to school and struggling with food in general, gaining 25 pounds at that point, and getting all the way up to 195, was this thought that I needed to cut out sweets to get in better shape, right? So that was the first thing, that was my first experience with diet. I was watching a lot of bodybuilding culture, and that was the introduction essentially. So naturally, as I'm going through and I start to understand that I'm gaining some weight, I hate the way I look as I'm in this process of, grant you, rehabbing to get back to playing football, but also hating the way I looked and my confidence level overall because I was dealing with this identity of like losing football and an injury and all the other things that come with leaving home for the first time and college overall. So then I run into the show or the movie documentary Game Changers. And I'm like, oh, vegan's it. I gotta lose some of this weight. Like that's the healthy thing to do. So I try vegan for a time period. And I remember being like, okay, I'm just gonna do vegan and like 6 days and I'm gonna have a cheat day. And I don't even remember how long I did vegan for, but I just remember one distinct day on a Sunday, Saturday after being out Saturday night and partying up, Sunday morning morning-ish time going to their Commons area and to get breakfast and absolutely just like gorging myself with food. All the things that I said I couldn't eat during the week to just killing foods, especially sweets, because I was trying to be very clean with the vegan as well. So I started, that was my little stunt on veganism. So tried that for a little bit, and I don't even remember if I lost any weight, but it absolutely, I mean, I don't remember smashing food like that to that point. Like vegan made me just like destroy foods. It was pretty ridiculous. I don't even remember how long I did vegan for. So then I got back to, we got sent home from school because of the C word, that time period in where the whole world shut down, right? And I'm like, okay, I've got to lose some of this weight. I hate the way I look. I'm lacking confidence in myself. And I thought that 6-pack abs and getting a girlfriend, really, I wanted that, would fix everything for me. So then what do? I go to I was tracking calories a little bit at school, trying to do MyFitnessPal, but essentially now I had real control of what I was putting in my mouth and what I was eating. So then I went to like more crash dieting, crashing calories, where I would eat much lower calories than I should have been. And basically guaranteeing, okay, if I eat this amount of calories, like I'll for sure lose weight. I just gotta, but it was also a little bit of preparation in case I overate later, because I was already dealing with this problem, right? Excuse me. In case I overate snacks later, I had this buffer room because I was under eating in the day. It was like 2,200 calories or something like that. And I've been able to diet on almost 3,000 and be just fine and losing weight. So at that point, it was a pretty big deficit for me. So got a little bit of crash dieting, and that really was a big pivotal point of, losing and gaining, and really just my struggle with overeating in that cycle that I talked about at the beginning of overeating, destroying foods, feeling very guilty and shameful for what I was doing, and then restricting calories by, hey, the next morning, I might have a very light breakfast and light lunch to make up for the day before. Or I might it might have been just like skip breakfast entirely, or just ultimately trying to make up for all the food that I ate by either restricting in calories more or more activity, either steps, cardio, or gym entirely. So that was the foundation that was set. And at that time, sometime in that period, when I got back home, I also tried keto for some reason, tried that for about a week. And I remember helping in the yard one day, and I did it for basically 5 days. And I got to Friday, and I had, what's that called? Like the keto flu or something like that. Like my head was killing me. And I think that was basically the end of keto. And so then I went back to tracking calories, losing same 5 to 10 pounds over and over. And then the next diet I tried was I went through a time period of really kind of just trying to eat lower calories in general, but really coming back to this cycle that I couldn't seem to break, which was that binge restrict cycle. It was like destroying foods, overeating, and then not being able to stop, like not feeling like I have control or discipline over the foods at all, and then restricting them, or having guilt and shame for doing it, and then trying to restrict. And then that like created that cycle that I was just talking about. So then there was a time where I tried carnivore for a time period, and I lost like almost 10 pounds doing carnivore. And that was maybe a couple weeks, and lost that very quickly, and then gained that right back up, unsustainable. And then the most recent one that I've done was Whole30, where I lost about 8 to 9 pounds in the month. And basically, as soon as I started introducing sweets and bad foods back into my diet, things that I wasn't planning on cutting out forever. I was just trying to see some food insensitivities and stuff like that. But instead of trying to integrate somehow, be more cautious of them, I just tried to cut them out entirely, and then lost 8 to 9 pounds. And then immediately when I started to try to introduce these foods back to see, what might have been giving me issues, whatever, it set me off on like a month and a half stunt where I gained all the weight back and felt really unconfident and with food overall, and lacking discipline with food overall entirely. Getting back into that, like putting me back in that same mode of feeling like I have lost discipline overall. Each time I tried these diets, and every time that I've tried the restrictive diet, what's a restrictive diet? Restrictive diet is basically just trying to cut out certain types of foods, certain types of macronutrients, aka carbs. Really, that's the one that is the most popular right now. Carnivore or keto are very popular right now. So the pattern that kept coming up was trying to restrict and then rebounding harder, and then just basically affirm that cycle over and over, because each time I would try to diet harder, I would try to restrict more, and then every time the overeating and the food obsession, like the food addiction, and trying to being just like really obsessive over food got worse and worse and worse. And because ultimately the telling myself that I couldn't have these foods at all, and without any real plan of introducing them, not even going into any of these diets with the mindset of like, hey, is this something that I'm going to do forever? Or how am I going to do this sustainably? Whatever. That restriction in itself just totally mentally destroyed me. And it made me so obsessive over food again. And this all or nothing mindset that came with it, where it was all good foods, the things we talked about toward the beginning, or if I had a little bit of bad, it would just spiral me, man. Like sometimes it was just a day that it was bad, or just that day would be bad. Maybe it was just the next day. Sometimes it was over a week. And like I said, the whole 30 time period, it spiraled me for about a month and a half, and to where I could finally felt like I had some control over food again. Like it was really ridiculous. It's that binary, that operating system that I talked about to the beginning as well, of like good and bad. It's all or nothing. It's either all good food, or if I have a little bit of bad, dunzo, you've failed entirely. The perfection mindset, no nuance of, hey, certain social events, because that was a big one. Any type of social events or time out with family would throw me off, or I couldn't even connect with family and friends without sitting there worrying about the food that was on the table. Like the time I was at BJ's with my family, and BJ's Brewhouse, and there was appetizers on the table, and I'm sitting there telling myself, no, you can't have that. You're gonna gain the weight back. You're gonna get over your calories if you eat that. And feeling like this like anxiety inside me build up, and like stress in a way, worry inside me building up about this food on the table, and missing out on these really precious moments with family around me because I'm so worried about the food that's on the table. There was no middle. So like any type of deviation would totally, again, destroy me, derail me, and throw me off entirely. So here's the thing, ultimately, diets, restrictive diets, they do not fix this yo-yoing problem. They don't fix the gaining or losing weight and gaining weight problem. They just exacerbate it in my experience. They only make it worse. They only make you more obsessive over food. Because there's a couple things going on here. When you do decide that you're going to do a restrictive diet to lose fat, you decide to do that diet and you go all in. You lose weight very quickly because you've cut out specific foods that are easy to overeat on or very calorie dense, or you've cut out carbs in general, which again can be calorie dense or very easy to overeat. So you lose fat very quickly, and maybe it was like me with Whole30 where you introduce other foods back and then you couldn't feel like you could control yourself, or it was an event that threw you off, maybe a major event like an injury, some major life change. That was another common pattern for me as well. But ultimately, the diets only exacerbate this more because they don't teach you how you can integrate these foods into ultimately a healthy lifestyle. That discipline doesn't come from trying to cut out specific type of food, specific macronutrient. Discipline comes from being able to say no when the time comes, because it is jeopardizing it, or it's running into conflict with a value or a standard that you have for yourself as a man. So discipline is being able to really eat and perform and living a life with standards and values are up to them, and nobody's gonna be perfect. That's where the nuance comes in, and being able to recognize that in itself. But being able to change that mindset of, hey, discipline does not come from just like entirely all or nothing. It's either all these good foods and no bad foods at all. No, it's actually, it's being able to live to a standard. It's being able to live with a set of values. And that's what's guiding me here. It's not about the food itself. You're never gonna go the rest of your life without eating any dessert, any cake, any ice cream, drinking any beer, any bread, all these things that are deemed bad now that people try to avoid when they're losing weight. Wouldn't you want to figure out how to, again, integrate these into your diet overall, into your lifestyle, have them, enjoy them with friends and family, and just like connect over, because there's other thing here is like food is cultural. And you know, if you're like me, I've had this mindset of like, oh, that's stupid, you could just have the discipline. It's like, yeah, but do you always want to be the guy that's always like worrying about food or what's in front of you, versus just being like, dude, I'm gonna have a piece of cake with my family and just like enjoy the time that I have with them, and that's it. And then I'm gonna go about my week after that. So That's really my biggest problem with the yo-yo diets, or with yo-yoing cycle and then diets overall, is there's no confidence to be built, and the restriction only makes you more obsessive, and an obsession can lead you to miss out on some really precious moments in time. And with the restriction, there's also that cycle that I've talked about repeatedly several times inside this video of you overeat, you're guilty and you're shameful, or guilty and shameful for not being able to control yourself. You hate the fact that you couldn't control yourself in that time period. So then you try to make up for it through restriction, and then the cycle just like continues. So really the exit to this, and being able to finally be able to control yourself and feel like you do have discipline around food, and then eating and living to a standard, to values of yourself as a man, rather than feeling like you are controlled by food in a lot of ways, or food just like consuming your thoughts like way too much. I genuinely think that we create more problems worrying about the things we eat rather than just having a little bit of them from time to time. Whatever, it could even be a little bit on a daily basis, and I genuinely think that it's worse. You're having a hard, or it's worse for you worrying about them than if you were to just have a little bit. I don't know. That's my belief, because of how bad stress is for our bodies. Stress can create disease. And so that's really my belief there. So if you resonate with this, I'd love to connect with you. Shoot me a DM on Instagram and let's chat about it a little bit. Also put my booking link to book a call if you want to down below. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, yes, you could continue to try these different diets and lose weight very quickly, but not learn how to integrate any of these other foods that you're not planning on cutting out forever. And you can learn how to build discipline and an eating to standard and values yourself as a man, and feeling like you actually have control over food without needing to totally cut all these foods out. And you can then lose fat sustainably and keep it off forever rather than continuing to gain it back. So again, if you do resonate with any of these, let's connect. And I leave you with this. Just over the next 48 hours, start to notice those moments that you become all or nothing, where you immediately look at a piece of bread or candy or dessert, something that's inside of your house, or somebody asks you, hey, you want this? You're like, nah, that's bad. I can't have that. Think about those moments and like see how you can reframe a little bit. And because it's really not about good and bad. It's like these foods have more calories. They have more sugar. They can be easier to overeat on. But we're trying to dismantle like the moral ground around foods that create this like guilt and shame thing. Dismantle that and then rebuild from there. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. Like, subscribe, and let me know what you guys want to see more of. We'll see you next one.